A new theory hit me the other day like a massive wave of dust, and it is the Dust Bowl itself, and I think we need to all re-examine this entire situation. This video right here is what kind of set me off and sparked it, as I saw and realized, he goes by the narrative. A lot of things go by the narrative. I'll show you the Wikipedia in a second, but it made me very skeptical because this is during a time where no one really could convey the news outside of what was being told. So we have to really just trust the story. And the story itself claims that, just a lot of farmers who were the amazing farmers at that time just did everything so wrong that it created years of dust bowls, about 8 years in some spots. And this is what really hit me as being something very suspect. Diseases to follow dust. Chicago, warning signals against disease were run up Thursday in the wake of the week's surprise recurrence of dust storms in the Southwest. Illness and death due to infection of the throat and lungs show a sharp increase when the dust clouds are afloat, the Journal of American Medical Association admonished, recounting results of a study of the dust-laden period from January to June 1935. The journal said, Kansas experienced its most severe measles epidemic during the 5 months, with 40,000 cases as compared with the previous high of 22,000 for 12 months of 1917. In addition to measles, acute respiratory infections prevailed in unusually large numbers. Numerous cases also of streptococci, sore throat, and corneal ulcers and eye infections were reported. The dust is irritated. The journal said that the study showed the disease danger lay in the irritating qualities of the dust in the mucous membranes, and that there was no evidence that the storm spread disease-carrying organisms. It's very nice that they pin that up. They make sure to make it known that it wasn't caused by any disease-causing organisms. Dust proofing of houses and the wearing of masks is what they then recommend. So this made me immediately think, what would happen if you were to destroy a civilization that nobody knew about, because the Midwest is very big, very massive, and very protected by mountains and canyons and all this stuff. So it's just so huge. And again, what is to prevent them from actually blowing up civilizations and having this be the wave that gets come from the explosions? You can see craters all over that part of the country that we say and we're taught again are thousands of years old and from space. But what if they aren't? What if they're actually bomb craters? And, what if they've always had massive bombs? They had TNT for a really long time. They've had gunpowder forever, and they claim to only have nuclear explosions in the 40s. But it may have come a little differently. So I want you to take a look at these articles. I'm not going to go into supreme depth here, but I am going to bring about my theory and show a couple other articles relating to this kind of stuff. I mean, these things were huge. They tell stories about, there's houses that get covered, get swept away and completely covered. The U.S. government was asked to finance the fight on the dust storms, and so they had a lot of people surveying it too, scientists. They came up with a lot of solutions like building a bunch of trees, and so they claim that the ancient grasslands and the bison lands, which were destroyed because the bisons were destroyed, and that created this loose soil, the grasses, getting rid of the grasses in place of wheat and cheap wheat to bring it up and bring the prices down and do all this stuff. They ended up having a surplus, and then they figured that led to it because it was over farming. But is that true? Can that really happen and create such a massive dust storm? It only happened during this 8-year period. It doesn't really happen too much more than that, but they always kind of put the fear of us into it. Even in the movie Interstellar, that whole kind of shift from moving away from Earth happened because of dust storms and blight. So I wonder, Hollywood and the news and science and all the corrupt people of the world are always in cahoots and want to put that mind control out there. So chances are they probably did it in that movie for a reason. But this is really cool too. A lot of places that didn't see rain for up to 3 years, they just saw dust storms. Then when it rains, the kids go outside and they play, and it's amazingly incredible. The kids love it. They don't know what to think of it. And they said that after even 2 hours of rain, poor torrential rains, the ground would be dry within minutes after that. So something weird was going on, and that was pretty cool. But then you see things like this. Moving of thousands from poor land to fertile farms is government's aim. So they were actually in order to be the government and be their amazingly helping hand, they were offering people whose farms were destroyed different land. So they'd move out of their land, sell their land to the government, and then they'd get another small farm somewhere else. So we always see this in different cases where the government creates a disaster and then creates a solution to be the hero. Even in places like Hawaii and things where they burn places to the ground and level them, then they get the people to sell them their land because it's useless and they have no money, and then they build whatever they want on it and completely change it, and then completely change the history, and then say, oh, a bunch of dust bowls ruined it, and then people are like, whatever. They don't even think about it. So this article goes to say dust storms are a blessing in the way that they kind of created a plethora of wheat, and then it failed, and then they had to move to different crops. So they're like learning. They try to find the optimism in this whole thing and try to make the people not go crazy. But so I found that government part very interesting, that the government had a role in this, in protecting it. The government can protect you. The government can find you a way out. They can do all these things. And so they always make it out to be man-made dust storm, blame the people, do everything like that. Another telltale sign that there could be something sinister behind it. They always blame us for the stuff that they do, and then they come with a solution, and then we think they're the heroes, but we don't. But these storms were way too big, and when you see the massive explosions and the shock waves that get sent from the explosions and the nuclear tests and other big explosions, you wonder if this could happen. And if civilizations were in the Midwest were building their buildings out of sandstone and clay and dirt and mud and all brick and all these different things, if you were to blow that to smithereens, it would create a massive dust storm, no doubt about it. And then it would spread soil all over the land that wasn't made for farming. It was made for building. So that would make another sense why nothing could grow in it, and they were worried that it would turn into a desert. So again, I'm just kind of rethinking a lot of these stories that we've been told, and just trying to figure it out, trying to look at it a different way, because we know that you can't trust any of these things. And so this was kind of interesting too. They sent a famous photographer and article writer, a reporter, over in that whole area to kind of document the story that was going on. And so you see these articles all over the papers in a certain amount of time in the 1936, and then you see a couple little blurbs after. I think I included it in here, of one of those articles that you can see where it talks about people that were upset about how that article represented them, because the article was trying to say, oh, this is a wasteland, the people here are like fighting to survive, like they're like, it's partly their fault, all this stuff, kind of, stay away from this area. Meanwhile, people in that area were saying, what's going on here? Like, we this area is great, this soil's fertile, we have a couple problems, but we're dealing with it. It's not as apocalyptic as the news people are putting it out to be. So again, you have a difference between what the news article says and what the people are saying. And that's just one countering argument I heard. There could have been millions, but only one made it to a paper. The papers always dictate what happens and what the people think of reality and what the people in the future think of reality. So that's why I kind of look in it, just to try and find those other countering examples that might be tucked in. And so again, my theory I'm going with, and that I'm kind of thinking and proposing here, again, I don't know the truth. I don't know any of the truth. But I have a feeling that the Western Rockies, the canyons, they were all a massive civilization. And anybody going out there in the early days that would have discovered it and come across it could have A, easily been killed, or B, easily had their story never been told. Even if some guy back in the day finds an amazing city and runs into the most populated place in San Francisco, and the Expo, and starts giving out flyers and telling everyone, oh my God, look at what I've seen, blah, blah, blah. It could again be squashed immediately. Any story can be squashed by the powers that be. And so we really don't know what happened. They could have had an entire massive operation of destruction of civilizations going on, and the people that are farming would have no idea about it. It's almost like they cultivate the land, and they destroy a civilization, then they cultivate the land, and then they invite us to come join it. Kind of like San Francisco. So much evidence of ancient Spanish cultures and so many different cultures, but in the 1840s everyone went out there for a gold rush, and there was only a few hundred people there, yet the place is massive. So again, cannot be trusted. The stories can't be trusted, and they could do anything. They could have done anything that before the 1840s, they could have destroyed everything, turned that whole thing to dust, done everything, looted everything, taken all the stuff, taken all the people, shipped them out, done whatever, and no one would know. And they could have done the same thing with the entire western part of our country, where it could have had tons of civilizations, and then you just melt it to dust. Whether it's airship technology, some ancient technology we don't know, using divine lenses and magnets, or I mean not magnets, but the magnification to ruin things, to melt things. If there's, just massive explosions, any of those craters could have been huge to send shockwaves, destroy things. Famine they could spread those measles and all those diseases, and then they could have carried in the dust, and that's why those outbreaks were increasing. It could be anything. There could have been biological matter from the destruction that was traveling in those dust storms, causing people to get sick, landing on the ground, doing all these things. And when you see places in other parts of the world that are similar to this, they find different pieces of tile, different pieces of rubble and stone somewhere. So they could have swept all that up. They could have done anything. There's no telling. Again, this is just a theory. I will expand on it more in the future as I think more about it, but it just kind of came to me. And again, it has to be one of those things that we look into and we reverse engineer, because every single thing in history that has a tiny couple sentence explanation is usually much more, or always much more elaborate than that, and requires actual pages and books in order to fully understand a particular topic. But a lot of people will just believe what's easiest and they'll go with it, and they'll fight to the death to prove something they can never prove. And so I don't want to do that. Again, I'm humbled by the reality. If the truth comes along and if it's exactly what they say, I'll gladly accept that. But I know that they lie so much. They never stop lying, and they never stop manipulating us to think less and less of the world, and to think that this miracle of life is worse and worse when it's actually the most amazing possible thing. And our history is a big part of that, and we need to rediscover it, redefine it, and reinvent it and bring it back. And by learning our history is one easy way to do that, because if we can find out who was doing all this damage and who was really causing all these disasters, these so-called natural disasters, then we can end it, hopefully, and figure something out, because we're due for some catastrophically monumental realization for all of us that takes us to the next level. And I hope we can get it, whatever it is, whether it's massive trees, the Dust Bowl being a destruction, our history being, or all of the above, Mount Meru, everything up north beyond our realm, the poles, all this stuff. We got to keep digging and find it all, because we have been bombarded by a wave of nonsense, a wave of historical garbage for so long, just like the Dust Bowl recipients. And so it's time to sift through the dust and find out some reality. So if anyone has any insight, definitely share it below in the post in the community. I saw a lot of people commenting on what the stories they'd heard and different things like that. I love sparking interest like this. So everybody, let's join in. Let's get to the bottom of it. Bless you all.